Hello, I wanted to talk today about something that sort of been sticking in my mind a little bit, and I've only just now come around to talking about it. And it's this concept of the way Americans view the president and the role of the presidency, the office, and the way the British view the office and the man or woman of the prime minister, as well as the way they view the monarch, especially Queen Elizabeth II. I recently lived in Great Britain for a couple of years and sort of sunk my teeth into the way politics is done there. And it's done with a very different attitude. I suppose I'll get into it. So the way I'll start with the United States because that's my frame of reference, is that in America, I say we, not really including me in the way I view this, but there is a feeling about this that the office has this kind of um, hallowed feeling uh, within the citizens, almost in the same way that you would view a saint or a prophet. And inevitably, when the president is elected, he sort of wears the clothes of this saint or this prophet. And of course, the president is a person, a flawed person, sometimes a very flawed person. And all these, and then the people see, what their expectations of what the president should be. Then they see what the man himself is doing or isn't doing. And then all kinds of accusations and claims of unpresidential behavior. And these have been going around forever. Uh, I probably would say since the second president of the United States, John Adams, we in America have this sort of hagiography. And it's actually quite physical that we have a whole statue, a whole monument carved into the side of a mountain at Mount Rushmore of like it's kind of like a pantheon where all the great um, names in the U.S. presidency are carved into rock, and it's kind of the goal of every president to be that next person, next face carved onto the rock. Uh, and so people expect that of the new president, and it doesn't. The expectations are way too high for a president to be considered uh, even coming close to living up to them. And so you get these claims of unpresidential behavior. I mean, in my own lifetime, I guess they're ramping up. I guess before my lifetime with Nixon, really let down a lot of people because he got caught doing something very unpresidential, basically snooping on his enemies and then covering up the uh, whole business. So much so that he ended up resigning. He was the only president ever to have resigned. Um, and then you get people like Bill Clinton, who got caught in a sexual affair with an intern at the White House in the Oval Office, which is kind of like to an American, I know that it was a very political thing. Haha, we caught him. Let's just jump on the opportunity. But there is a bit of in the Oval Office where all the great decisions are being made and all the great, you know, the churning of the wheels in the head and we you did it there. That's kind of and it is public property. So you're kind of we didn't elect you to do that kind of thing. But and then you have people uh, like George W. Bush basically making up a lot of nonsense, or at least buying into a load of nonsense to go invade Iraq. And then you have people like Donald Trump tweeting probably from the toilet, bored out of his skull, or just too much energy, and then he just goes out there, and people lose their mind. And so, rightfully or wrongfully, people have put the bar up so high, and then when nobody ends up meeting it, they all end up being sort of a disappointment or an outright catastrophe in the people's eyes. And it really is kind of unfair to put those expectations on the president. Um, and, because we have examples of this, or at least I would almost call them like legendary examples, where we might not know a whole lot about the man himself, but inevitably you want to live up to someone like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, who have, by all accounts, have been really remarkable men. And it's something that, we're very lucky to have, especially George Washington and, Abraham Lincoln, that they were the steady hand in a very tumultuous time in the history of America. And we need something like that. And then when we don't have that, you get the world around you, an absolute, schizophrenic mess. And people like we have, a lot of poetry written about them. There was a line written by Light Horse Harry Lee, who was actually Robert E. Lee's father, who was a founding father and bigwig in the American Revolution, who called when George Washington died, first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. And I cannot overstate how much he has been put in his place in America as that's what you aim for. But the interesting thing is that going back to the man himself, the president is also a political character. And he's elected by the people, and he was actually voted for by a lot of people, but he's also voted against by a lot of people. So obviously when people don't get their way, and there are no consequences of calling names or anything like that, you're going to get a lot of names, and that's the problem, is that you have basically people are very upset. I think that the media kind of ramps up people's emotions to the point where they just encourage you to be as hot, like hot takes and just being as nasty and vicious as you can possibly be, when it's probably mostly in your head. And it seems to me that we often forget that the man could be a woman, but it never has been a woman. The president is a political character. He was chosen by people within his own party to represent them at the national level, or at least, go as a candidate in the presidential election. So both of them ended up doing that, or both the candidates end up doing that. And inevitably, one of them is going to win. And so the losers are very bitter about the loss, and the winners are just rubbing it in everyone's faces. And they actually just go way beyond what their win is supposed to mean, is that you got 51% of the votes or 52% of the votes. You were not elected to rub it in the faces of the 48%. And no president in my lifetime seems to understand that. They always kind of make vague allusions to being a uniter, not a divider, and it's just simply not true. And I think if you even tried to do that, your own partisans would be pissed off at you for not doing that. It's not about magnanimity. It's about revenge for all the terrible things said throughout the election. And so inevitably, when you have this really hyper political environment, it means that a lot of political decisions are made which are going to be unpopular with the people who didn't vote for the president. And so when you say, "Oh, well, you're not living up to the uniter," George Washington, who was chosen to be the president because he was the only man who could actually do the job because nobody else had the credibility. Like Lee said, he was the first in war. He was the general in the revolution. He was first in peace. He was the only man who could actually tie the country together in the early days of the republic because the interests, the geographical interests were so varied that he was the only one who really just had that credibility throughout the whole country and was able to unite them. And then first in the hearts of his countrymen, because of that, because he did not abuse his power, because he knew his role. I guess that's the thing, is you got to know what your role is as a president, and you got to, it might change from time to time, but he never went beyond what was expected of him. A lot was expected of him, and he lived up to that. But it just seems like the presidents today, they just don't understand their role. So, obviously, when these decisions are made by the president and the speeches are given by the president, they're very political because he's pandering to his crowd, and he's also riling them up against the other side. There's no union there. And obviously this happens in Britain. But this expectation of presidential behavior, just no one ever lives up to it. And so it just gets ramped up and ramped up and ramped up, and to the point where, you got impeachment. And like in the last 25 years, there's been 3 impeachments. And they were mostly, other side finally getting enough votes that they could actually put this guy on trial. And it was just, it's just obviously, all 3 examples find the president did something that he probably shouldn't have done, but to run the whole country through the impeachment process is really just, it's just toxic for everyone. And so you can never live up to that expectation. And inevitably, the president simultaneously is this evil man. It doesn't matter what party he's from. The other side will see him as this evil man who is basically stealing this hallowed, position. Well, we just need somebody better. And you're just not going to get that in today's political environment. And it's really depressing when you think about it. And I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon. Now, if you want to contrast that with the monarch, the UK political system, let's put it like this. You have the monarch, who's the queen. She is, I don't know, probably 95, 96 years old. She's very old. And then you have the prime minister. So the prime minister obviously is elected. You have a bunch of elections, and the party who wins the most, or if the party wins a majority of the parliamentary elections, they get to form a government. The Queen will call the party leader of the winner of the election, say, I invite you to form a government. And usually it's up to the prime minister and the party to decide who the cabinet will be, basically the big, minister of defense, the home office and the foreign office and all that. And the queen just has to, basically the prime minister has to go in there and they do weekly meetings. I don't know with coronavirus, it's probably done over the phone. But basically saying to the queen, look, this is what I intend to do about this situation, and this is an act that we have going before Parliament for a vote. And basically just once a week giving the queen an update on what's going on. Now the queen has this, I think that unfortunately for Americans is that the president serves both of these roles in the same person. So essentially you have this sort of schizoid man in the office who, on the one hand, has this sort of hallowed role that the Queen plays as being like above politics and representing the best of the country. I mean, this is where the term aristocracy comes from. Is krasi means rule, aristos means best. So you're ruled by the best. That these are the smartest, most capable, and just generally your superior. I don't know, obviously it kind of degenerates into an oligarchy where it's the rule of the few. Um, and that basically just some idiot who has lots of money is ruling everything. But it's not an aristocracy is the best are doing it. And it seems like the Queen and her family really go out of their way to avoid very divisive topics, or at least being seen to be involved in politics. And really, what you see of the Queen is that she meets with foreign dignitaries. Like when the president goes over there, he meets with the Queen, and then he meets with the Prime Minister. And she will give a couple speeches a year. She will go in front of Parliament, open it up, and say, "Here, all right," just kind of like a ribbon cutting ceremony, but it's Parliament every year. And then she addresses the nation on TV on Christmas Day, I think around 3 o'clock. And she kind of just does a review of her own personal life as well as the life of not only the nation, but all of the Commonwealth and any country that still has her as the titular head of the country. And then she kind of gives an optimistic view of the year to come. And, we all have struggles. And she's, it does reek of just kind of vague platitudes. Obviously, she's 1,000 years old. She's not writing this. She gives it very well. This is all she's ever done with her life. So it makes sense that she's good at it. But in the same, just watching this one the last year, you saw her talk about her husband dying and going through coronavirus while her husband was dying, and then did die, and then they had the funeral there at Windsor, and it was very trying. And so it's when you look at the Queen, she doesn't complain, and it's just, I wish there were more people like this. She doesn't complain. She just gets on with it. And, she really plays this role incredibly well. And she probably does have political opinions. I don't know if she votes or not. But that's the thing, is that you don't know because she hides it so well, because if you were really, really, if you weren't as good as she is at it, you would probably tip your hand one way or the other. So I get the sense that Charles, her son, he's taken too many political decisions or many political stances, particularly with the environment, which tends to be a little less controversial than like Brexit, for example, or coronavirus policies. People in England generally, and as well as the rest of Britain, generally love their environment. And there's nothing like the English walking through fields. Like, the shittier the weather, more of them are out there. I always likened the British, especially the English, to being like worms. It's like, you never see them when it's dry, but as soon as the rain comes out, they all come out like fucking worms. It's really something to be seen. But anyway, like, I think that the Queen has this. She has that role that we would expect of the president, the expectation of somebody who represents the country as a whole. She's done that incredibly well. A pluses to her. The prime minister he does not enjoy that kind of popularity because he has to get involved with politics because he is a political animal. But that role of prime minister is not as sacred as the role of the president is, because he doesn't have that queen, the monarch's role of being sort of above everything. He has to be in the middle of it. And he's not even, the thing is, like, he's not even voted for. So the prime minister today, it's January of 2022. The prime minister is Boris Johnson at the moment, and he's not even voted for by the public. When we vote for the president in America, you get to vote for the president, no matter what state you're in, no matter what party you're in. The only people who voted for Boris Johnson, I think he's the member of parliament for Uxbridge, which is sort of the extremely outside area of London, bordering up. Actually, it was the next constituency over from where I live. That he was voted for by the people of Uxbridge, or the Uxbridge constituency, and that's it. He was the most senior member of the party, therefore they all kind of get together and say, we're going to put him as the face of our party. And that's it. So when you vote for the person who's you want to vote for, or you want to represent your constituency. And then it's very secondary. So you have no say in it. You kind of know who you're voting for, but you're also voting for a particular candidate who is not the prime minister, unless you happen to be in that one district. Then you kind of know, well, if I'm voting for the Conservatives, that's probably a vote for Boris Johnson. Rightfully or wrongfully, some members of parliament actually kind of piggyback off of that. Some of them kind of distance themselves from the prime minister, depending on how well they can sell themselves in the area. But see, the thing is that he's, like, at the moment, he's basically gotten in a lot of trouble because he and his government took all of this advice to basically no Christmas. That was the thing. Christmas of 2020 was no Christmas. You're not allowed to get around with your family. Only the people who live in your house. Your grandmother's got to eat alone, and you can't meet with anybody outside of that. It was really draconian. It scared the crap out of the whole country. People were grumbling about it the whole time. Me and my wife, we were there alone, so it wouldn't have made any difference to us. But I totally get the feeling that they took that away. And then a year or so later, word got out that they had parties in Number 10, parties in different places, with just drinks all around, just party after party after party of people who are not supposed to be partying. They made this big deal about us, the little people, not doing it, and they did it themselves. And meanwhile, the Queen, God bless her, she went out to her own husband's funeral. I think it was in April. And she had to sit alone in a church pew to watch them perform a funeral on her dead husband because she followed the rules. Shows you, and then I'm sure the Queen, was not happy about that. To be around your family when your husband is dead, and the father of your children and the grandfather of your grandkids is dead, you want to be with your family because they're the only people who matter to you. Obviously not the only, but those are the people who matter the most. So the prime minister is in a lot of trouble for this. And he's doing his best to try to survive. But the president, you kind of expect this of a prime minister, but you don't expect this of a president. I mean, he would be lynched from the highest tree, if they ever caught wind of something like that. But anyway, so yeah, the prime minister doesn't enjoy that. Even just the aura of the office doesn't ring the same way as the president does. So, the prime minister never really gets. Yeah, I mean, there's no sacred role, so you don't really get caught, or you don't get when you get caught doing something bad like this, people don't say, well, it's the prime minister. The people are just pissed off that you made a decision that ruined Christmas for them. A lot of people died, never seeing their family because of this stupid coronavirus. And you made the queen sit there and ruin the last moments of her husband's life, the funeral of her husband. And for what? You went out and had a drink still. So in the final analysis, I really think that the UK's sort of split of what they would call the head of state being the monarch and the head of government being the prime minister. I think it's a very healthy split because you get to keep both aspects and tend to be roles performed well. You just can't perform them in the same person the way the head of the state and the head of the government is the prime minister or the president of the United States. It just doesn't really work that well. And it's a really healthy split. You do see this in other European countries, like Germany has a president. They have a chancellor who is pretty much like a prime minister. They just give it the word Kanzler. Italians have a president. They all have in the countries with like the King of Spain, and you have the Prime Minister of Spain. It's a very similar setup. You are able to keep that sort of face of the country separate from the dirty, backhanded, nasty section of politics. And America has this sort of very, I would even call it psychosis about the president. Just unreasonable expectations. You cannot be an angel and be the president because you have to win elections. You have to get the other guy dirty. You have to be nasty. You have to get in bed with really nasty people. I've always said this, you cannot be a good person and be the president. It just, even if you went into it as a good person, you will come out of it having done some really horrible stuff. But every single president kind of wants, they feel that they have that in their mind that they want to be, like the whole thing with when Obama was running for the first time, you thought it was the second coming of Christ. It was really kind of bizarre to watch. You always see this like looking off in the distance, that kind of thing. It's just like, oh, what the big dreams is he coming up with next? And, really he's just looking over how to screw over his opponent. So anyway, those are just some thoughts on it. If you have any of your own, please leave a comment. I'd actually be interested to hear what any Brits would have to say about it, because I don't get the impression that they think that the prime minister, it's an important job. You do have a lot of work, and it's important work, but it's not given that sort of otherworldly love, consideration the way it is in America. So that's about all. Thank you. Talk to you soon.